Hello, I'm William Hong from First Stay Realty Inc. Our website is firststaybc.com. Today, following up from last time, I'd like to talk a bit about buyers. So what I'd like to share with you today is it's going to be quite a bit subjective. This isn't something you'll find in a textbook. Rather, based on my 16 years of experience as a realtor, I've tried categorizing buyers and would like to share my perspective on the characteristics of each type of buyer. So first of all, please keep in mind that what I'm going to share today is heavily based on my personal experience and subjective opinions. First of all, when I go to listing consultations, what most sellers say is, I don't need anything else, I just need one solid buyer. After all, only one person is going to buy the house. Of course, that's true. You only need one person to buy the house. You don't need 2 or 10, just one solid buyer. But the problem is, in order to get that one solid buyer, you actually need 100 ready, able, and willing buyers. So today's main topic is raw buyers. Now, what does raw stand for? It stands for ready, able, and willing, the first letters of each word. So a ready buyer and able means someone who has, for example, a mortgage pre-approval, or in some cases, someone who can buy with full cash. Financially, there are no issues. They have the down payment and have received mortgage pre-approval. That's what this part means. Willingness is also extremely important, because it means they are highly motivated and really want to buy a house right now. So we're talking about buyers who are strongly motivated in this way. Therefore, a buyer who has all three of these qualities is called a raw buyer. But according to statistics, you need 100 raw buyers to sell a house. So you typically need to find about 100 potential raw buyers who are actively looking for a very specific type of residential property in a particular area. Out of those initial leads, roughly 10 of them will actually reach out to schedule a physical showing for that specific house. Then, after you have completed about 10 of those showings, you can generally expect to receive one single formal offer. This can be seen statistically. Of course, what I'm telling you now is quite generalized, so I can't say it applies in every case. It varies depending on the market situation and also differs by region. But overall, if we lump everything together and assume the market is just normal, neither particularly hot nor slow, and the area isn't especially hot or low either, then typically about 100 people make contact, around 10 interested buyers actually do a showing, and among them, you get one offer. On average, you get about one offer for every 13 showings. So when the market is neither hot nor slow, these are the kinds of statistics you can expect. In any case, you must remember that to get that one solid buyer, you need about 100 low-intent buyers. This is something sellers should keep in mind, because real estate is ultimately a numbers game. So, I've broadly categorized buyers into about 8 types. Once again, I want to emphasize that this is just my personal opinion and subjective perspective, so please keep that in mind as you listen. Now, the golden buyer, what is a golden buyer? As the name suggests, they are the best kind of buyer. These are people who have already sold their own home and while waiting for the closing date are looking to buy a new place. Since they have to buy a house and have already sold theirs, they are 100% committed. Absolutely the most reliable buyers. They are the most prepared buyers, and because their closing date is set, they are under time constraints, which means they make decisions quickly. They also know the local market and property values inside out, so their decision making is very fast. However, they also tend to be very tough negotiators. Because they're so good at it, they'll say it's too expensive or too cheap. They're very good at pinpointing things, but in any case, the likelihood of closing a deal with them is high. If the house is decent and the price is reasonable, since they have to buy anyway, the chances of closing the deal are extremely high. So I analyzed the golden buyer as the number one buyer for now. Secondly, this is more of a practical matter, but I said that buyers who have made an offer and failed once, twice, or even 3 times, in other words, buyers who have made offers and failed, are the second best buyers. But in reality, practically speaking, they might actually be the best buyer. The reason is, of course, what I'm talking about now doesn't apply to the current market situation. When the market is hot, good properties get sold quickly. In those cases, buyers join this competitive battlefield. And let's say they make an offer of $580,000 but lose. Maybe they lost by $10,000 or $15,000. Then, when a similar house comes on the market, they make another offer and lose again. By the third time, these buyers go all in. Their calculation is, I made an offer 2 or 3 weeks ago at $500,000, but it sold for $520,000 in a multiple offer situation. So next time, if I start from there and make another offer, it'll probably sell for $530,000. Because of this calculation, when they make their third offer, they might just go $50,000 higher. So when a buyer who has already lost twice and is now offering $50,000 more competes with a first-time offerer, the buyer who has lost twice is naturally much more desperate and likely to offer a better price. In professional terms, we sometimes jokingly call these people crazy buyers, or in slang, nutcase buyers. But anyway, these so-called extremely motivated buyers, whether there's one, two, or none of them when I receive offers on my listing, that's really up to luck for both the seller and myself, as I've mentioned many times. So a buyer who has made a 5% higher offer and lost could actually be, in some ways, the number one buyer among the lowball buyers. What's more, these people have a very clear idea of the exact house they want in the market. Their budget is set and their preferred house style and budget are clear, so they make decisions very quickly. They've already learned the hard way that good houses sell fast through their failures. That's why when the next opportunity comes, they're very proactive about not missing out. But what I'm talking about now, of course, applies when the market is at least somewhat hot. In a market like the current one, honestly, this doesn't really work. So in any case, in a normal or hot market, buyers who have failed in previous offers are very important buyers. Third, there are those who have received mortgage pre-approval. Up to this point, I consider them raw buyers. So usually, when I occasionally get consultation calls from clients asking for help, the first question I ask is, have you by any chance discussed your mortgage situation with the bank? So how much have you prepared for the down payment? And overall, have you discussed your budget with your mortgage specialist? That's the first question I ask. If you haven't done that yet, I can introduce you to a mortgage specialist I know, or you can go through someone you know to fully sort out your mortgage situation first. Then once that's settled, you can contact me and I'll be happy to help you. That's what I tell them, because that's the proper order. That way, especially when the market is good, you can make an offer right away as soon as a good house comes up, because you'll know exactly how much you can spend on a house down to your budget limit. So those who have received pre-approval through a mortgage broker, this person would be the third type of well-prepared low-risk buyer. Especially among RA and W, the ability part stands out here, because there are no financial issues. Therefore, it's highly likely that all the other factors are already prepared as well. So up to this point, these are the types of low-risk buyers I have been talking about. Next, this is a bit of an exceptional case. Sometimes there are people who move to Vancouver from other regions. It could be from another area within BC as well, or even from a completely different province, whether it's Ontario, Alberta, or Quebec. Some people want to move here to Vancouver. Normally, the standard way is to physically come here first and then start looking for a house, but isn't that quite inconvenient? In the meantime, you'd have to find temporary accommodation, and it's also difficult to store your belongings, so some people decide, I'll just buy a house before I even come. These are the kinds of people I'm talking about, and it's not impossible. Nowadays, you can look at photos online and even watch virtual tours or videos, so people are giving it a try. The key issue is that it's extremely important to find a realtor you can truly trust. So when you look at buyers relocating from other regions, they generally fall into two main categories. That's what I've noticed. They're either scammers or genuine buyers, so it's really polarized. So among buyers relocating from other regions, for reasons I don't fully understand, there are some scammers mixed in. But if they are genuine buyers, the closing rate is actually very high. That's because these people have certain limitations. They can't physically view the property. So I go to the showing, and whether it's through FaceTime, WhatsApp, Kakao Talk, or any other video call, I connect with them and show them the property while explaining everything. They watch the video, and since they already know the price and other details, they can decide this seems good enough. Because they have so many restrictions, they tend to make decisions quickly, almost immediately after seeing the property. So the transaction success rate is actually much higher than with people who are already here. I haven't done this a lot myself, but I have helped a few clients this way. That's why I want to emphasize that buyers relocating from other regions shouldn't be overlooked. For these buyers, from the seller's perspective, it's important to have professional photos taken. Virtual tour videos are also essential because these buyers make not just a preliminary judgment, but almost their entire decision based on these photos and videos. So you never know, and it's important to be well prepared and present your property professionally. Next, when you actually hold an open house, the majority of attendees are these kinds of people. They are people who live nearby and are looking to either upsize or downsize, and there are also neighborhood looky-loos or people just coming to check things out mixed in as well. So when I say looky-loos, I mean people who are also thinking about listing their own house and notice that the house next door is on the market. They want to see how the neighbors have set things up. They want to check out what the price is like. So when there's an open house, these people come by to snoop around trying to get ideas for listing their own home. There are also plenty of lookers who just live in the neighborhood and are curious about how others live or what their homes look like. So more than half of the visitors are not real buyers. If you look at the people who come, over 50% are like this. The problem is, it's hard to distinguish between a golden buyer, a real buyer, and these looky-loos or just lookers. You can't really tell who is a real buyer, who is a golden buyer, or who is just snooping or just looking. That's why, as I'll mention again later, you need to open up your showings and try to show your home to as many people as possible. There's really no other way. And finally, let me emphasize again that this is just my personal opinion, so please keep that in mind as you listen. It's not necessarily always like this, and I could be wrong. I'm simply organizing and sharing the things I've experienced with you. So I hope there are no misunderstandings about that. From my personal experience, the types of buyers that tend to take a long time are tenant-to-owner buyers, first-time home buyers, and senior buyers who are looking to relocate, especially for tenants who are currently renting but want to buy a home. Of course, these people usually have their basic down payment ready and can get pre-approved by the bank, so they are able to buy. However, when it comes to their willingness, things tend to move quite slowly. That's because they question, do I really need to buy a house right now when I'm already living in a rental? This is because there's no sense of urgency. There isn't that desperate need to buy or sell a house, so the sense of urgency is relatively low. So if the price is right, they'll buy, but if it's not, they think, I'll just wait a bit longer. There's a tendency for this kind of mindset. Not everyone is like this, but it's quite common. Secondly, there are first-time homebuyers who are mostly younger people. From a realtor's perspective, working with these clients is challenging because you have to teach them everything from A to Z and guide them through the entire process, which is much more demanding, at least 2 or 3 times harder. Also, when working with first-time homebuyers, the trust and loyalty between the client and the realtor are absolutely essential. Both sides need to trust and believe in each other and move forward together. So it really is 2 or 3 times more difficult. It also takes a long time. However, one good thing is that after you work hard to educate and guide these clients step by step and the deal goes through, there's a high chance that they'll become lifelong customers. Because you've invested a lot of time and built a lot of rapport, if trust hadn't been established in this kind of relationship, the relationship would have already broken down. So the fact that the deal was ultimately successful means that you overcame all those difficulties as a professional, which is why the bond is very strong. Lastly, senior buyers. These are mostly people who are retired and of advanced age, and since they are retired, they have a lot of time. Because of this, their decision-making process is very slow and meticulous. So it takes a really long time, and in terms of motivation and such, they tend to be a bit less driven than typical buyers. As a joke, I often say in seminars that they're first home buyers, but they're senior buyers. Isn't that the worst combination? Just to be clear, that's a joke. I often share that joke whenever I give seminars. Anyway, what I'm sharing here is based on my own subjective judgment and how I chose to categorize things. I'm definitely not saying that this applies to everyone, so I hope there are no misunderstandings. Next, finally, I defined a group as buyers to be cautious of, and these are buyers who don't have an agent. Especially when holding open houses, sometimes people come alone. In that case, the first question I ask is whether they have a realtor they work with. Sometimes they say they do have a realtor, but the realtor couldn't make it because they were busy. In that case, that's fine. That's okay, but if they say they don't have one yet, then I become very thorough and meticulous, asking all sorts of detailed questions and verifying things. I ask about various things like how their mortgage situation is, whether they're currently renting or own their home, and other tough questions. If they get offended by these questions and feel like I'm asking too much and just leave, then that's the end of it. But if they sincerely answer each and every question, then there's a high chance that person is a genuine buyer or a low buyer, so I respond accordingly. However, in most cases, when someone says they don't have an agent, they're usually in the early stages. They're not quite ready to buy a house yet. They're still in the market research phase, just looking around to see what kinds of homes are available and at what prices. In these cases, honestly, most agents don't spend a lot of time on them. So, especially for those of you watching this on YouTube who are planning to buy a house but don't have an agent yet, I think it would be good to keep in mind what I'm saying now. Conversely, almost all serious and prepared buyers already have an agent. So, as a buyer, I mentioned that not having an agent is something to be cautious about. To sum up everything I've said so far, the key point is that sellers are ultimately looking for low buyers. But from the seller's perspective, you can't know from the start who is a low buyer, who is a golden buyer, who is a failed offer buyer, or who is a mortgage approved buyer. That's why you have no choice but to actively accept all showings and expose your property to as many buyers as possible. It's a numbers game. Also, as I've consistently emphasized in these YouTube lectures, the first 3 weeks after listing are the golden time, the moment of truth. Based on this, I think it's important to develop a good strategy for showings as well. So, actively collecting buyer feedback is a strategy I can recommend to sellers. With that, today I shared my very subjective classification of buyers and their characteristics based on my own experiences and insights. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me at any time. Thank you again for watching this video all the way to the end. I'll see you in the next video.